Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into something pretty specific.
Yeah, we've got this stack of sources looking back at predictions for the Chinese tech industry.
Right, forecasts made right at the start of 2022. And they caught my eye because, well, they came from a particular place.
They did. It's a Chinese media outlet, sure, translates roughly to everyone is a product manager.
Okay.
And they focus on business, product management, and their outlook for 2022, based on the end of 2021, wasn't exactly optimistic.
No, not really. I mean, 2021 was such a turbulent year for Chinese tech giants, wasn't it? Lots of regulation, big penalties.
Absolutely. So this source offered a pretty sober perspective on what might come next.
So our mission today is to unpack these specific predictions, understand the context behind them.
And figure out what these forecasts, which, yeah, might seem a bit dark, really tell us about where China's tech scene was heading.
And maybe, just maybe, find some seeds of future growth hidden in there too.
Should be interesting. There might be a few aha moments as we navigate this.
Okay, so before we jump right into the 2022 predictions, we really need to understand the backdrop. 2021.
Yeah, you can't understand 2022 without looking at what just happened. The sources are really clear. 2021 was tough.
Brutal even. The source highlights these huge government actions.
Massive anti-monopoly fines, like the one against Alibaba.
Right, and then there was the double reduction policy.
Which essentially wiped out the private tutoring industry for young kids overnight. Huge impact.
And of course, Didi. That whole saga.
Oh, yeah. The New York IPO followed almost immediately by the app suspension.
For a ride-hailing company, that's crippling.
Pretty much stops the business cold. And you saw the language from the government shift, too, didn't you?
Yeah, from preventing disorderly expansion of capital.
To preventing the barbaric growth of capital, much stronger.
That shift alone tells you something significant changed.
Definitely signals an intensification.
But here's a key point the source makes. The why behind all this. They argue it wasn't just like an attack on capitalism itself.
Exactly. They use this really useful analogy, the theater effect.
Okay, the theater effect, how does that work?
Imagine you're in a theater. The people in the front row, the big players, maybe Alibaba, Tencent, stand up to get a better view.
Right, makes sense for them.
But then what happens? Everyone behind them, the second row, the third, they all have to stand up just to see anything at all.
And most people still don't get a better view. They're just uncomfortable and tired.
Precisely. So in this analogy, the government is like the theater manager stepping in.
Telling the front row to sit down.
Basically, yeah.
Wow.
Not necessarily to stop the show, but to try and level the playing field, right? Reduce the dominance of those few giants.
So everyone else, the smaller companies, the startups, further back.
They actually get a chance to see, to compete. It creates space, potentially opportunity.
That's a great way to frame it. It shifts the focus from just punishment to, well, market recalibration.
Yeah, managing the market dynamics.
Okay, so with that context, a tough 2021, the government trying to reseat the theater, let's dive into those 10 specific predictions from Hool for 2022. What did they see coming?
All right, prediction number 1, a big one. Alibaba will sell its shares in Weibo.
Weibo, the big social media platform. Why would Alibaba divest?
Well, the source pointed straight at government pressure, pushing these huge conglomerates to dial back their broad influence across different sectors.
Okay.
And they noted some actual movement there. Alibaba's CEO stepped down from Weibo's board early in 2022. He was replaced by someone lower down.
Suggesting that strategic link was weakening.
Exactly. Even though, historically, Alibaba kind of needed a platform like Weibo because they didn't have their own native social network like, say, Tencent with WeChat.
But the regulatory pressure made holding non-core assets maybe too risky or too visible.
That seems to be the interpretation. Become less of a sprawling giant. And for Weibo, well, depending on who might buy those shares, maybe it opens up new avenues for them.
Interesting. Okay, prediction 2, completely different area. No VRR headsets selling over 1 million units will appear in 2022.
Yeah, basically forecasting slow adoption for the whole metaverse hardware thing, at least that year.
Why did they think that?
They offered a couple of reasons. One was maybe a bit cultural, suggesting people in China tend to prefer fulfilling desires in the real world, making that full separation of VR less appealing broadly.
Okay.
And second, just a lack of really strong domestic VR products at the time. They were seen as lagging behind things like Oculus.
So lots of buzz about the metaverse, but the prediction was the actual VR hardware wasn't going to hit mass market scale in China in 2022.
Right, but they did contrast that with AR, augmented reality.
Ah, okay. Where you overlay digital stuff onto the real world.
Exactly. The source saw more practical uses emerging there, like Wooling Motors using AR in showrooms. You have a few real cars, but then use AR to show off the whole range, different colors, options.
Clever. Save space costs.
Yeah. And Douyin doing things like AR features tied to landmarks. Point your phone, see digital effects.
So AR felt more immediate, more business-ready, perhaps more culturally aligned than full VR immersion back then.
That seems to be the takeaway from that prediction. More practical, near-term value.
Got it. Prediction 3. The online advertising market growth rate will be below 8% in 2022.
And ad spend is usually a pretty decent economic indicator, right?
Absolutely. It often tracks overall consumer confidence and spending.
And the source highlighted a real slowdown in retail sales growth towards the end of 2021, like only 1.7% growth in December 21.
Wow, that's low.
Yeah. And when sectors like dining, travel, general retail slow down, their ad budgets often follow suit.
Did they give specific numbers for the big tech players?
They did. For Q3 2021, online ad growth was pretty tepid for the big three, BAT, Baidu 6%, Alibaba just 3%, Tencent 5%.
Okay, so not exactly booming.
No. And the broader point the source made was this reflected China potentially moving from that super high growth phase.
To something more stable, more mature, maybe slower growth overall.
Exactly. And advertising spend was just one signal of that larger economic shift.
All right, prediction 4 sounds really significant. WeChat channels DAU will exceed 600 million. That brings Zheng Xiaolong into the picture.
Yeah, the guy famous for building WeChat itself, and then key features like mini programs and, of course, channels.
And channels is basically WeChat's answer to Douyin, right? Short video.
Precisely. It's Tencent's play in that hugely popular space. But its real power, the source argued, comes from its integration.
Within the massive WeChat ecosystem.
Totally. Think about it. You watch short videos on channels, you see a product, you can tap through to buy it in a WeChat shop.
Pay with WeChat Pay.
Share with your friends on WeChat. It creates this whole seamless loop all inside the WeChat universe.
Which already had, what, over 1 billion daily users back then?
Easily. And channels was estimated around 450 million DAU at the time, so predicting it would hit 600 million.
That puts it right up there, competing directly with Douyin.
Exactly. That's the big insight. It signaled this emerging three-way battleground Douyin, channels, Kuaishou fighting for dominance in short video and especially live commerce.
And potentially pulling users and spending away from the more traditional e-commerce websites.
That was definitely the implication, a big shift in online retail.
Okay, prediction 5. This one sounds a bit more sobering. A major tech company will conduct large-scale layoffs, over 10%.
Yeah, and this ties into a concept the source discussed called involuted, or no-jinging.
Involuted, I've heard that term. How does it relate to layoffs?
Well, the way the source explained it, involution happens when external growth opportunities kind of dry up or slow down significantly.
Okay.
So instead of expanding outwards, the energy and competition turn inwards. First maybe within the industry, then even within individual companies.
Like fighting over the existing pie instead of baking a bigger one.
Pretty much. It can lead to more internal politics, maybe less efficiency, creating rules just for the sake of rules, that kind of thing.
Internal friction increases.
And the argument is, when that external growth isn't happening rapidly anymore, you don't necessarily need that massive workforce that was hired for hyper-expansion.
The focus shifts.
To stable operations, maybe optimizing things, which often means you can do it with fewer people.
So major layoffs and hiring freezes become a likely outcome of that broader shift, that involution setting in. It's a structural thing.
That's how the source connected it, yes.
Okay, let's switch back to e-commerce. Prediction 6, another big number, this time for Douyin. Douyin e-commerce's GMV will exceed 1.3 trillion yuan.
Oh.
Yeah. Building on that idea of content driving purchases, this prediction was huge for Douyin's e-commerce side.
It really underscores the source's view that e-commerce was becoming, or maybe already was, Douyin's main value driver, possibly even bigger than advertising for them.
And they're masters of that content-based consumption, right? Interest EC.
Yeah, you're just scrolling through videos, something catches your eye, maybe a creator is using a cool gadget or wearing a nice shirt.
And boom, you can buy it right there. Almost impulse buying driven by entertainment.
Exactly. And the source put that 1.3 trillion yuan number in context. Douyin's GMV was apparently 500 billion in 2020, maybe 700, 800 billion in 2021.
So predicting 1.3 trillion for 2022 was forecasting absolutely massive accelerated growth.
It's a staggering number. They pointed out it was roughly 13% of China's entire B2C e-commerce market just a few years earlier, in 2019. Bigger than Japan's whole B2C market then.
Okay, so the takeaway is clear. Douyin wasn't just a social platform anymore. It was predicted to become this absolute juggernaut in e-commerce, changing how people shop.
Fundamentally, yeah. Integrating shopping into the content feed itself.
All right, prediction 7 takes us back to Didi again. No surprise they feature heavily. Didi will sell its community group buying business, Chengxin Yuxuan.
Yeah, given the chaos of 2021 for them. The IPO fallout, the app suspension.
Which, as the source noted, was linked to data security concerns, the VIE structure being U.S. listed.
Yeah.
It hit their core ride-sharing business hard financially.
Absolutely. And Chengxin Yuxuan, this community group buying thing, was something they'd launched before the IPO.
Kind of a diversification play.
Yeah, but it was apparently very low margin, losing a lot of money, maybe intended to make the overall company look more stable or diversified for the IPO.
But once the main business was under severe pressure,
They just couldn't keep bankrolling this loss-making side venture. The source mentioned it was already shrinking fast, pulled out of many cities, daily orders crashed.
Right.
And significantly, when the Didi app finally came back online after they decided to delist from New York and aim for Hong Kong instead.
the link to Chengxin Yuxuan was just gone.
Gone from the app, yeah, suggesting it was already being cut loose.
So this prediction was really about financial necessity. Didi shedding non-core cash-burning assets to survive and stabilize for a potential Hong Kong listing. Back to basics.
Seems like it. A prediction driven by their difficult circumstances.
Prediction 8 looks at the broader app market. No new apps with over 10 million DAU will appear in 2022.
10 million daily active users. That's a pretty high bar for a completely new app.
It is. Why did the source think no new breakout hits like that would emerge?
Their main point was market maturity. The Chinese mobile app market was just incredibly crowded and developed by then.
So where was innovation happening, if not in new standalone apps?
According to the source, it was shifting, either happening within the existing super apps, think mini programs inside WeChat, which are huge,
Right, apps within an app.
or by creating more niche, dedicated experiences spun off from those giants, like Douyin Box, which was Douyin's standalone app focused just on e-commerce.
Okay, so the prediction was that the era of a brand new app rocketing to tens of millions of users almost overnight,
Yeah.
that might be over. Growth was becoming more incremental, happening inside existing walls.
Or in very specific verticals tied to those ecosystems. That was the idea.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, prediction 9. Amazon Kindle will withdraw from the Chinese market.
Yeah, there were already some hints, right? Like those stockouts of the actual Kindle devices late in 2021.
Amazon tried to explain those away, but the source suspected more was going on.
It did. And their reasoning for predicting a full withdrawal was multi-layered.
What were the key factors?
Well, first, just intense competition. Tons of cheaper local alternatives, reading apps on phones, really affordable tablets,
okay.
plus access to content. Lots of free classical Chinese texts available digitally, and modern ebooks were often super cheap, especially with coupons.
What about Kindle's advantage with foreign books?
Limited, the source argued, because of content censorship anyway. And crucially, Amazon's main e-commerce marketplace had already packed up and left China back in 2019.
Ah, right. So Kindle was kind of left stranded.
Exactly, an isolated business unit. You often couldn't even easily buy a Kindle from Amazon in China. You had to go to Tmall or JD.com.
So put it all together. Tough competition, cheap local alternatives, content limits, and being operationally isolated, withdrawal seemed pretty likely.
It looked increasingly unsustainable, yeah.
All right, the final prediction, number 10. This one's a bit different, about a specific person. Li Ziki and Weinian will reconcile.
Ah, Liziki. Her videos are incredible. That idyllic rural life, globally famous.
But she'd stopped posting, right? There was some kind of dispute.
Yeah, she went silent in July 2021 and then actually sued her management company, her MCN called Weinian.
What was the issue?
It seemed to boil down to control and money. Weinian apparently held a 51% stake in her personal company, giving them the majority, say. Speculation was rife that it was about how the massive profits from her brand were being shared.
Okay, so a pretty serious falling out between a huge star and her agency. Very public.
Very. But the source predicted they'd reconcile. Why?
Money.
Pretty much. The argument was simple. Both sides were losing an absolute fortune while her content wasn't being produced and published. Her audience is enormous.
So the prediction wasn't based on personal feelings, but on pure economics. The financial pain of the standoff would eventually force a resolution.
That seems to be the logic, yeah. Plus, huge fan demand for her to return. Mutual interest, basically.
Okay, so that's the full list of 10. Divestments, slowdowns, layoffs, withdrawals, shifts in e-commerce, even a celebrity dispute. If you just look at the headlines, it does sound kind of negative, especially after 2021.
It could definitely seem that way on the surface, but this is where we need to remember that theater effect analogy.
Right. The giants in the front row are being asked, or maybe forced, to sit down or at least shuffle back a bit.
And when they do that,
It creates space.
yay.
Opens up the view for everyone else behind them.
Exactly. That's the potential positive spin, the opportunity hidden within the seemingly negative trends. The source really leaned into this.
It suggests the focus shouldn't just be on the handful of massive players anymore.
Because the action might be shifting. Those medium-sized companies, the startups, the ones who were kind of overshadowed before.
Now they might have a better shot. More visibility, more room to maneuver, maybe attract investment or talent.
That's the crucial insight here. It's not solely about BAT anymore. You need to understand the dynamics of the whole industry, because the rules of the game were seemingly changing. Growth and innovation could come from new places.
So let's connect this back. Why should you, listening right now, care about these specific 2022 predictions from one particular Chinese source?
Well, because it's a really fantastic case study, isn't it? It shows how these big, sometimes abstract forces, government regulation, market saturation, changing consumer habits like that content-driven e-commerce.
They aren't just news headlines. They have direct, concrete consequences for real companies, for entire industry.
Yeah, they shape strategy. They determine which products launch or fail, which business models thrive or wither.
And understanding that picture, seeing how those dynamics played out or were predicted to play out, it helps you appreciate just how fluid markets are.
And how challenges, even major disruptions, can sometimes create unexpected openings. Those hints for tomorrow, the source mentioned, might be found in today's difficulties.
It really drives home the point about looking beyond the usual suspects, beyond the biggest names on the marquee, to see the whole picture.
Definitely. The next big thing might be brewing in that second or third row that suddenly has a clearer view.
So this deep dive into these 2022 forecasts paints a picture of a tech landscape really in flux, being actively reshaped by regulation and just natural market evolution.
It's a reminder that aiming for maybe more stability or a more tempered pace of growth doesn't automatically mean innovation stops.
Right, it might just shift where the innovation comes from and who benefits most from it. A recalibration, maybe?
That's a good word for it. Recalibration.
Okay, let's leave you with a thought to consider until our next deep dive. If that prediction about the end of the era for huge standalone blockbuster apps is largely true.
And if innovation is increasingly happening inside existing ecosystems like WeChat or Douyin,
Where else might we look for the next wave of significant digital innovation? Thinking beyond those obvious channels, both in China and maybe globally, where's that next row getting ready to stand up?